Hey everyone, this is Pastor Teddy Winter, campus pastor of Seacoast Church in Asheville, North Carolina. As you are aware, it's been a heck of a year in Asheville. We've had a lot of things happen with the hurricane, and a lot of things are still in flux as we continue to rebuild and recover. And just to let you know, the area still hasn't fully recovered and won't be fully recovered for quite a long time, probably several years. The North Carolina Governor's Office estimates that 70,000 homes were damaged from Hurricane Helene, forcing many folks to stay in tents and RVs or find alternative places to stay. And across North Carolina, more than 7,000 private bridges, roads, and culverts were damaged, meaning access to homes and communities were cut off. The North Carolina Department of Transportation estimates that it will cost $5 billion to repair and replace what was damaged. Today, you're going to hear from two guys that represent the sort of good that God tends to highlight in His creation during the most dismal of times. They are nothing less than heroes, in my humble opinion. They have been part of the Asheville campus much longer than I have, and as I've heard about how they were serving their neighbors so selflessly, I started to see and truly believe that God had them made uniquely to help meet the needs in a time just like this. They were truly ministers of the gospel through their love and action. You're not only going to hear how God used these two to help meet the needs of their fellow man, you'll hear stories from these guys on what I believe to be God's guidance on what to do and how to serve from one day to the next. In the show notes, there will be links of videos that show in real time some of the projects that they've worked on and problems they help fix in the community. You can also still give to a GoFundMe that helps continue their work. You'll see a link to that too. Lastly, if you're watching here on YouTube, you'll see some pictures of some of what they are talking about in these conversations with Joey. Thank you, Seacoast, for your love and support for these last 6 months. There's still a lot of work to be done, and anyone can go to seacoast.org/missions if they're interested on finding out how they can pitch in as well. Now, here's my friends and an integral part of our church family, Gabe Witte and Thomas O'Haron.
All right, here with Thomas O'Haron and Gabe Witte. Are you witty? I know you never hear that one.
No, never.
Ever.
I was thinking about calling my restoration company Witte Restoration.
Well, y'all, I just spent some time recently in preparing for this talk, and I have to say that I'm just kind of floored. And we've been talking for the last 30 minutes, so I've got a pretty decent feel for, just how God has cut you guys, how He's made your hearts, and I'm very excited for listeners to hear y'all's stories. And Gabe, you actually said that Thomas, I forgot your choice of words, but it was like he was made for something like this.
Yeah.
And then I'm hearing Thomas, like the things that you did that came just so naturally for you. I'm like, first of all, I don't have the skills, the know-how, any of that stuff. Like the only good that I would bring to that area is basic stuff, but then
Can you
also
bring coffee?
Yeah, I could do that. But before we get into all of that, and I want to get into some of the story of you guys realizing, oh my gosh, this is real deal. This is some bad stuff happening right now. Let's introduce the listeners to you guys. So, Gabe, how long have you been in the Asheville area?
I've been in the Asheville area 13 years.
13 years. And you live in a town that has one gas station and a couple restaurants?
Yeah, it's a small
couple hundred
place.
People?
I'm not sure the number. It's in between two, Brevard, North Carolina, and Hendersonville, North Carolina, and you'll pass by it in like 1 minute or less.
And what's it called? What's the name of the town?
Etowah, North Carolina. I'm like 45-minute drive from Asheville's main campus, Seacoast campus.
Yeah.
And, man, we'd gladly make that drive, though. It's so thankful for Seacoast and everything that they've done for my family. Mm-hmm. We've been going to Seacoast. So I met Aaron LaFalce,
worship leader over there.
A year after we had lived there. I was working downtown at a Christian coffee house. He came in for an open mic, and we started jamming, and he said, "Hey, come play in my worship team," and still playing with him.
And how many years ago was that when you started?
12 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And Thomas and I met like shortly after that. He started coming to Seacoast.
Yeah.
Maybe 10 years ago or something.
Yeah, probably.
10 or 11 years.
Yeah, it's probably going on 12 years.
So you're the
11,
bass
12.
player, right?
Yeah, one of them, yeah.
Yeah, one of them. All right, so family, man, you're married. How many kids?
I'm married. I have 2 kids.
Okay.
One of them's 25. We had her super young.
Dang.
And then we waited and had another one and Levi's 10.
Yeah. Wow.
So we got quite
Nice
the
little spread there.
spectrum. Yeah. And it's great having a son a little bit older and being able to appreciate the time I have with him. You know, the first one goes by so quick.
Mm-hmm.
And this has been just a blessing to have, you know, it's hard to keep up with a 10-year-old at my age, but
Yeah.
great.
What do you do for a living? Like, what's your vocation?
So I am a woodworker. I restore homes mainly as a living. I do everything from kitchens, baths, I can do tile, I can do a little bit of electric, a little bit of plumbing. If I have any questions on something difficult, I call Thomas. Thomas is one of the most skilled people I've ever met, and so like tricky things, he's my go-to.
Yeah. So is handyman a term of endearment, or for somebody like you guys, it's like, oh, that kind of devalues your skills? Like when somebody says, "Oh, you're a handyman."
Well, I mean, I guess people understand that a little bit more. I can do handyman type stuff.
So handyman technically to you guys means very basic stuff.
Very basic.
Gotcha.
You know, if you need a
Toilets leaking.
your toilet's leaking, you need a light bulb in a hard to reach area.
Right.
Maybe gutters cleaned if it's
Yeah.
single level house. 2-story house, you're a little bit higher level handyman.
I'm mesmerized by the skills of what you guys are calling handymen. So if I probably refer to all of y'all as handymen because I'm like, wow, I can't believe you know how to do that.
I get told I make things look real easy.
Yeah.
And it just comes naturally. Yeah.
All right. I do want to hear when you're not working on stuff for a living, like what are some fun things that you like to do?
So I coach a baseball team, my son's baseball team.
Sweet.
I've been experiencing Holy Spirit on the baseball field. I don't know how to explain it, but it's time.
But the Holy Spirit's like getting you wins?
Well, I mean,
You got angels in the outfield?
maybe. It's more like just time stops when I'm on the ball field with the boys.
That's cool.
Like
Man.
there's just a joy that fills me from it, and it's just makes me feel like a little kid again, being out there with them and being able to impart what I know about baseball to them.
Like, kind of like a happy place where everything else is shut off, sounds like.
Yeah. And so I look forward to baseball. We're about to kick off right now. We drafted our team 2 nights ago. And
Sweet.
last summer, I led the Hendersonville 10U All-Star team to a state title.
Dang.
And,
so we're a good coach.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I played baseball into college, and having a son brought it back to me. It kind of broke my heart, and I stopped playing and pushed it away.
Yeah.
And then it was just a real perfect timing, blessing, bringing it back into my life.
Yeah.
And it was kind of an idol in my life, and God's turned it into a place where He meets me now and uses my gifts and talents.
Yep. That's cool, man. That's cool. Well, I want to thank you. We're going to get to you here in a second, Thomas, but I want to thank both of y'all. So for our listeners, these guys drove from Asheville this morning to be in studio. I offered y'all the option of doing it remote, but it's always a better vibe having y'all in the room. So thank y'all for making that drive, man.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, Thomas O'Haron.
Yes.
So, Mr., you sound like have you seen the movie Taken by Liam Neeson?
Yes.
So you sound like the Liam Neeson of skill, handiwork, restoration,
Okay.
and like. Yeah. But he sounds like Liam Neeson that he can like do a little bit of everything. I mean, oh my gosh, some of the stuff that you're telling me, like you test communication signals from your house to start there. What in the world were you just talking about?
So I've always had a drive and a like to be able to communicate, through radio signals, CB radio, ham radio, and so I always see if I can get, the tower set up and see how far I can broadcast with it.
just for fun.
Just to see if I can have a clear line of communication from my place in Saluda to my house in Asheville, which is
30-minute drive.
Yeah, it's 30-minute drive, which I've done it in like 22 minutes. But it's like 35 miles from drive to drive. It's 35 miles. And so I have a base station set up at my house.
Yeah.
And which I enjoy talking all over the world with that. It's just on a 11 meter setup right now. And then I have a tower on a mobile monopole you can stick up in, just a few minutes. It's 60 feet in the air. And so I can set up communication. I can plug up to my truck and I can have communication with the house. And that was
Proved to be helpful.
Very helpful during the storm because cell phone towers were down, power was down. I can run this off generators off my truck. And so I've got a pretty nice radio set up in my truck. And so I was able to get my mobile or my base station set up in the house right after the storm.
Gracious.
And set up communication. And I went across to Asheville to check on friends and family. And,
all right, let me stop you right there. Let's get your background first. So married, did you say 5 kids?
No, 3 kids.
3 kids. Okay, 3 kids. How old are they?
So Gavin is 16.
Yeah.
Jane will be 13 later this month. And then Reese, she just turned 8 back in November.
Yeah, and you grew up in the area?
Yeah, I've been in North Carolina since I was 3 years old.
Yeah.
So that's 41 years.
Was that pretty beneficial knowing the area, I would imagine?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I grew up in Saluda was my main area. I grew up
especially once we got back in the disaster zones because there's no road signs anymore. Everything, you can't, it's like half the road is gone. I mean, we were still at first getting turned around, especially at night. Like,
oh yeah, at night it was because it's just totally landscape's gone. There's no houses, no mile signs you can see, you can relate to.
Yeah. So to give you guys a little bit of a reference point for me, my parents since the early 2000s have gone to KOA in Swannanoa.
Yeah.
So that's
not anymore.
I know.
Have you seen it?
No. In fact, I took my boys there in June of this past year, and it was very memorable because we're Celtic fans, and me and William got to watch the Celtics win it all on the TV and everything. And I'm like, after all this stuff happened, I was, oh my gosh.
It's wiped clean. It's a clean slate.
Yeah, I did try to, when I was visiting my firefighter friend, Hayne, who lives in Black Mountain, I did drive up to the KOA, and I'm just kind of a rule follower. There's part of me is just like, I just want to walk the area, but I was like, what if I get busted? But anyway, what do you do for a living? Well, first, what's your relationship to Asheville campus? How long have you been there?
So I've been at Asheville campus for probably, I'd say about 11, 12 years.
Yeah.
A lot of people I've grew up going to church with prior to Seacoast. But I've been involved in church since I was 15. I met my wife in church and youth group. We hung out, and then we served on, back to service, we served on our other church in different ministries before we got married. And so we've always had this drive to serve.
Yeah, so you go back before Teddy, I want to say, or was Teddy there when you got there?
No, Teddy was not there when I.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah,
That's
this
what I
was
thought. Both of you, yeah.
Teddy actually started as the youth pastor, and my daughter was
Gotcha.
Was just for a small time frame. I'm not even sure months. I would say he was the youth pastor, and I remember when he became the campus pastor, she was like, "No, you can't take him from me."
Right. So y'all may not know, I was a campus pastor for about 13 years, and many of those years were with Teddy. So him and I are pals.
That's
I love
good.
that guy for sure. All right. So what do you do for a living?
For a living,
Mr. Liam Neeson.
So I grew up in construction. My grandfather was a big building contractor. My dad was a big licensed plumber way back in the day, back in the early 80s. Most of my family has done some form of either light grading to construction, remodeling, do a lot of remodeling. A lot of big bed and breakfast around Hendersonville area I grew up going after school and cleaning up the job site. That was my main forte. And then around Saluda, I could name every bed and breakfast that I've helped remodel growing up.
Wow.
And tell you about I could tell you the layout of everyone and every room or whatever. But that's kind of what.
That may be a problem a little bit. I'm just kidding.
No. And then before is what brought us to North Carolina. I really don't know what brought us here, other than, my family was kind of in the, oil industry back in the 70s when it kind of tanked. And they didn't do much with the oil industry as make the money. My grandfather they'd go down to Kinston, North Carolina and buy a truck, bring it back to Missouri where his partner was, and they would retrofit it, these big military cranes, and make them where they could be used in the oil industry, and they would flip vehicles, set up these big tanks and stuff. All of a sudden they said, we're moving to North Carolina. And it was either Boone or Saluda, and so they bought a place in Saluda, and then that's kind of where I migrated to Asheville. Mm-hmm. And I've done, everything from dig the footer of a house to put the last piece of metal or shingle on top, and everything in between, decks, kitchen, bathroom models.
He even did my custom shower in my house that I just renovated.
Jeez.
Yeah, I actually had another builder in town come over to my house, and they seen what I'd done with my tile shower, and they built one just like it in their house.
What do you do for fun?
What do I do for fun?
Work.
Test your radio signals.
Yes, I do like to do that. I
love that, man.
I really do like to do that.
Like some people have end of the world, or if you're a Christian, in end times fantasies, and you're prepared, man.
It's just natural, yeah. But I like to get out in the woods. I like to fish, hunt. I like to mess with an old piece of equipment. I've got an antique sawmill. I like to get some time in on eventually, but yeah.
So, listeners, one thing that I really want to get into, and the little bit that we've talked off air, I will say for y'all that y'all are two pretty humble dudes. If y'all said it for yourselves, then y'all wouldn't really be that humble. You'd be prideful about your humility. But it is very noteworthy, and one thing that I want to learn about, and our listeners learn from, is the extent of your selflessness and the amount of expertise, like I would say professional expertise, that you brought to real immediate needs and didn't ask for a dime. So I want to get into that, but before, and many facets of it. Before we do that, though, you had talked, Thomas, about a couple of situations that people in that area have lived through. I don't want to get into the details of those, but at what point with Helene did you guys realize, holy crap, this is really bad. This exceeds anything that we could have imagined happening to this area? Like, at what point in the night, maybe take me back to that night. Like, where were y'all? Were y'all hunkered down in your house? Were y'all expecting what happened?
So that week, actually the previous week, it had rained. We had some decent sizable rains. And
saturated everything.
Yeah, it was already, everything was just
the rivers were up.
Rain.
Everything was,
and I'd already gotten
point.
Like way above average rainfall.
Before the storm, we was already getting some flood stages in some areas, and I was already getting clients calling me, because I do like grading and drainage and all sorts of intricate stuff for your property or land or whatever. And so I took one of my small machines down, and I was like, I need to open up this lower road, because we had a rain, a month before that, 2 months before that, that creeks had already swelled up a little bit, and some businesses flooded out. They had 4 feet of water in their office space. So I was working in this division, And I was down
so
there.
the rain had already caused.
It was already
major
causing problems.
Wow.
Yeah. And so
I knew it was a lot of rain. I didn't realize to that extent.
So I had already, this is during the storm. Like, this is the 24 hours before everything went dead.
And as a community of people in that area, were y'all making the connection of this may not be good because of all that rain?
There was nobody knew that. It wasn't like, get ready.
There was none of that. It was just consistent rain, which we were used to.
Yeah.
And we're used to rivers coming up a little bit. But
it was just going to be a weekend storm.
Yeah.
A storm that's been weakened.
That's how hurricanes, they get to the mountains and they've slowed down and it's, heavy rain for a couple hours.
Yeah.
But the night before I was looking, because I lived in Florida, so I've experienced a bunch of hurricanes. And I was looking at the radar and I saw the hurricane in the Gulf and I saw this radar slick pointing right to us. And at that point, I knew this is coming to us. And I mean, it came so fast. It didn't even really slow down. I think because there was that weather in front of it, instead of it hitting land, they usually kind of die out and stall out.
It was kind of prepped.
Just boom.
Yeah, it was like
it was on us
loading rain
overnight. It went from the Gulf all the way to the mountains in a few hours.
Yeah, that day before the storm, I was down and cut an emergency ditch at the lower part of this property with a small machine that I normally wouldn't cut that ditch with. I'd use a bigger machine. That's what I had. I'm in rain boots, full rain gear, pouring the rain. I mean, if I wouldn't have been dressed, I would have been soaked. And I get down there, cut this ditch, get my stuff together, and I'm out of there. I'm heading to the house. That next morning, that night, heavy winds, early next morning, heavy winds. It started late that night is when the heavy winds, we had light winds the day before, but the rain just was like pounding and pounding and pounding through the night. And, that's why I was like, I was praying for my house, my family, my office, my equipment, friends, and just, keep us all safe and everything. And I was going to park my truck in a different spot of the driveway because I was afraid this big tree was going to fall. And something said, just don't worry about it. Just don't worry about it. Luckily, I didn't, because the next morning I was watching. I was out on the porch with my daughter watching. She's like, Daddy, that tree over there, it's going to fall. And I was like, really? You think? She's like, yeah, it's moving. It's going to fall. One of the biggest oak trees on my property in my neighbor's house fell. And my youngest daughter she's like, that tree's going to fall. And I was like, no, it's never fallen in the storm. She's like, it's going to fall. Watch it, Daddy. And it fell right before us and shut the whole main road down.
Gee.
And where I was wanting to park my truck, part of this big maple tree just piled up. It was like someone piled up a pile of big branches perfectly in the road where I was wanting to park. But I didn't move my truck. I just listened to my instinct. I felt like that's not what I'm supposed to do, which I feel like is you listening to God. He gets down into your deep soul, and he'll be like, he can direct you if you allow him. He'll tell you and work your way through it. So I didn't realize the storm was going to be as bad as it was. Yeah, we've had trees fall across the road and stuff, but until I went out, it took me a day to cut out of the main roads to get out. And I trekked with my truck
to get off your property.
Yeah, to go check on people because everything was dead. At 9:30, power was out, consistently out because it had been off and on.
No cell phones.
No cell phones.
Talking about PM, right?
AM.
AM. Okay.
AM.
I think our power went out at like 7 a.m. Woke us up because we run a fan at night. Mm-hmm. Maybe even earlier. I think it went out at like 5 a.m. because it woke us up early. And I was like, okay, here it is. And my wife jokes about, because I'm a bit of a prepper, not an extreme prepper, but like, all right, we get to use all this stuff now. Yeah. So I was kind of excited to, hook up the generator and actually use these things that I'd sitting new in the box.
Yeah. But in that area too, it seems like, as someone who goes there as a tourist, it seems like there's a lot of people that don't live next to two neighbors and neighbors across the street. They kind of are a little isolated. And that's I'm trying to wrap my mind around. All of a sudden, no one has contact with anybody.
No contact.
No TVs, no.
The only person I had contact with is a guy. I have a set of radio earmuffs. They have full communication. So if another person has that set of earmuffs on, they can have full communication when you're on equipment, running saws or whatever. And it's also linked to the FRS frequency. So if someone has a like a radio would take hiking or something, you can get on the same frequency and have full communication. This is the first contact I had with anybody off of our little mountain. And it was a guy on down the road wanting to know if he could get up to his parents' house, which was one of my neighbors. I've never heard this guy before. And just talking to him, and it was just because, how did he even know my frequency? He didn't know it. He just happened to turn his and go to that frequency. He could have heard me breathing, working the machine is what he could have heard, because it'll intermit and send a signal, doing that. He could have heard me by that way, I guess. But so we start talking, and that was cool, because I was like, hey, I'm up here doing it. And he came up and helped clear these branches and these big oak trees off the road and helped open the road up. Was one of the first moves. And then once I got my truck out, I established communication with my radio system at the house, and I went across to Asheville and checked on my mother-in-law, friends, and family, and had them come out to the truck and talk to my wife and kids at the house, the people I haven't talked to in a few days, and was able to set up communication. So I just went around to different areas, and then I seen the devastation when there's houses sitting in the middle of the river. Jeez. There's emergency crews trying to, because I was out there on day 2, there's emergency crews still trying to recover bodies out of houses that are stuck under bridges. And they're looking for the smallest EMTs.
Houses stuck under bridges?
Oh, yeah.
Goodness gracious.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. There was a house that floated up over a half mile away, this one area in East Asheville, and it was blocking another main road. And that's where I had to drive through like 3.5 feet of mud around it, because the silt in the river came up and just moved these houses down from mile up the river, half mile up river. Yeah, whole houses just sitting in the middle of the roads.
My firefighter buddy said that as fire workers, it was a helpless feeling seeing alive people float down and then under the bridge not come on the other side.
Yeah.
And they can't go after them because they'll get stuck in the debris.
Yeah, there's nothing you can do.
While we're talking about firefighters, I just want to give them a shout out.
Yeah, definitely a shout out. Yeah. We've been in places where, the firemen couldn't get through to people, and we was there, right there, already blazing a trail, fording a river where a big culvert or bridge had washed out.
So both of your families are safe.
Yes.
And you said day 2 is when it took you a day to get off your property.
A day for me to cut out, to the main road.
And I thought it was interesting, too. You were picking up signals from other people asking questions about roads and the conditions and whether they can get off their properties and stuff, and you were able to give them some helpful information sort of thing.
Yeah, and it's amazing.
What were the main needs in the immediacy after the storm? Was it helping people have access to get off their property? Was it rescuing people? What were you guys up to? And you jumped on later on, Gabe?
So the first 3 days I was in my neighborhood holding it down. I was going around checking on people. There was I live on a loop, and there was, I would say, 20 or 30 houses on that loop, and 5 of them had trees on it. And so it was going around talking to them. Day 2 and 3 without power, I was starting to get wind that this is bigger and badder than anybody expected. And so I was...
That's right. Y'all weren't getting the news.
Yeah, there's no news.
We didn't know what was going on.
We knew more about y'all's area than y'all did.
So we were kind of like, okay, well, this isn't coming on anytime quick. So I was talking to my neighbors, what kind of food do you have? Because at this point, there's no gas, no ice. There's if you don't have cash with you on you, you can't go to the bank and get money.
Right, and we were even thinking about people who have medications and insulin and stuff that they have.
That was one of the big needs. Was people's like, hey, I've got to take this insulin, or I got to take these pills to my grandparents or my aunt or uncle or whoever. So that guy was like, I need to get some stuff up to my my parents' house, and that was why he was trying to reach out for people, because he couldn't get down up the road, and there's power lines, active power lines.
Yeah.
I tested them. They're still hot.
I was wheeling my generator up and down the road, bumping people's refrigerators, keeping their food cold.
Wow.
For the first 3 days. And then there's no cell phones yet. And really, I wanted to check on everybody at Seacoast, but I really wanted to get in touch with Thomas. And so the first time I got cell service, Thomas was my first call, and thankfully he had cell service. And it was like, you would get it for 15 minutes and then it would be gone. And then, and he started telling me some of the stuff he was experiencing. Because my wife worked at the hospital, I couldn't really leave the house. But she did, that first 4 days, she just worked straight through. And once that happened, that's when I asked her if it was all right if I go help Thomas, because I had caught wind a couple of times, got a hold of him, and he was working these long days by himself, out there working the machines in dangerous situations. And he's the thing that actually convinced me, because he's so thorough with everything, is that he had locked his keys in the truck 2 days in a row, and I was like, okay, he's tired.
I have a magic key to get in.
He's tired and he needs my help.
Yeah, and I've heard that this was somewhat of the general climate of people in the area. Like everybody just almost like they shifted into help gear.
Yes,
which is just, man, you don't like tragedies like this and natural disasters, but it does seem to highlight the goodness that
there was a lot of help.
Humans.
People just being like, I mean, I'd go places, and every place I would go to, either passing by or stopping by, people was, saying, hey, can you take this and drop it off? I mean, there's so many occasions where, I left my machine out at I'm not going to call it a job, but at someone's residence or a community, probably a community be a good way to put that. But that we was out helping with, and I brought my trailer home, and I was at church at Seacoast, and then I get a call. Now, usually I wouldn't bring my empty trailer back unless I'm going to be hauling another piece of equipment. There's just no reason to haul it around. For some reason I brought it back. I was at church, and my wife's a school teacher. And so she teaches a local school in Swannanoa. And there was World Kitchen had a request to send, or a need to send out, like several big pallets of water and other supplies to the school, because that was a main drop-off. And there's like, someone just ask Thomas, he can do it. And I happened to have my trailer there. And so I went by and had...
Not just had it, it was empty and ready.
Yeah, it was empty. And I'm sitting at church with my truck and trailer, and it's empty. And I'm like, what better opportunity? So I was like, yeah, and they was like, can you be there at 12:30, 1 o'clock? Yeah, I was right over near the hospital. So I go over there, and they take this big forklift, and we set these 4 ginormous 6-7 foot tall pallets of water. I forget how many bottles that was. It was a lot. And then while I'm there, because I'm in my crew cab truck, somebody gets word. And I'm just standing around waiting for them to pull the pallets and load it. Someone gets word, hey, this guy's going to Swannanoa. And people just started coming that came from out of state. This one lady was from Alabama, and she had all this stuff, cat food and toiletry supplies and all sorts of stuff. But 2 or 3 more people just brought stuff, and I couldn't see out of my truck other than the straight forward, because they filled the whole cab of my truck up with supplies.
Wow.
Which was amazing. So I'm loaded. And of course they give me these big boxes of food from World Kitchen, which was great. That was the help of local restaurants cleaning out their supplies and cooking it for the community and keeping the community going. That's a whole different area to touch base on here. Mm-hmm. But that was great, because there's more times I wouldn't just go get food for my family. They would always say, hey, here's 10 extra. And I would always find a family or a community to go to, not knowing where to go, but I would just be like, Lord, where am I going to go?
Yeah.
I'm just going to drive down this side road that I normally drive down. And I seen some people out in the yard, and I was like, hey, do y'all need some hot meals? And I had 25 boxes of ready to go complete meals in my truck. And I was like, sir, come here. And I was like, do y'all need some hot meals? And I was like, man, we haven't had it. We've been eating out of cans for 4 days. And I was like, well, come here and get you some. And he was like, are you serious? And the dude's about in tears. And I opened the back door of my truck, and I was like, here, how many do you need? And he was like, can I have 4? And I was like, how about 6? And he was like, really? And I give him 6. And then I went to another community, and just... Yeah, you open your heart and let God move through, and He will just.
Yeah, there's a lot of evil in this world, but man, I hear these stories and how humanity comes together, and it really brings a whole new meaning to us being made in God's image. It's like the God in us comes, how God made us, it comes out, that image bearing. I want to let our listeners know in the show notes, we'll have links to some videos that you guys have on YouTube that basically chronicalizes. Is that the chronicles? I can't think of the word.
Chronologically?
What's the verb of chronicle?
Chronologically.
Chronologically.
No, that's the adjective.
Chronological?
If you make something chronicle, it's chronicalizing. I just made up a word.
There you go.
But
You copy that, Webster?
yeah. When we the three of us are on a text thread, and one of y'all suggested, I think we focus on God's stories and how working in that kind of purpose without getting paid money opened up a flood of blessings. The blessings and charity was all around us. Thomas and I, so this is from you, Gabe, but Thomas and I often talked about how easy they slip by, and we have missed out on some, which I want to ask what you meant by that. But before that, let's look at this quick video.
Here's a fascinating study that was just completed. That any person who is the recipient of an act of kindness has their serotonin levels increased just because they received an act of kindness. And their immune system is strengthened because they received this dose of kindness. That's the recipient. And secondly, any person who is the giver, the provider of an act of kindness, anything you ever do, but particularly towards the people that you're close to in your life, and particularly towards strangers, with just a smile, the serotonin levels in you are increased to the same degree that they are in the receiver. And so is your immune system strengthened. You want to strengthen your immune system? Be kind. But even more dramatic than that, I get excited about this. Because this is what blows me away about it, is that the observer of an act of kindness, has their serotonin levels and their immune system strengthened just because they're in the energy field of someone who is displaying kindness. When you see someone being kind to another person, it's like a dose of an antidepressant.
You guys mentioned just the good feeling that you had. Some people would, I think, probably tend to make that a surfacey thing. Well, of course. I mean, you're helping people. That feels good, but that's just a feeling. I mean, this guy is actually saying there's more to it.
There's a lot more to it.
Yeah, just a feeling. Yeah. But so, what kind of you guys? I said it this way with y'all off air. How y'all could have taken advantage of this situation and put a lot of money in your pocketbooks.
Yeah, we could have. Yeah. I mean, and not even in a bad way.
Right.
Just and there's a lot of people have taken advantage and ripping people off, and I'm not saying that. But just to...
There's people making a living, too.
There's people making good money, not taking advantage of anybody. And I actually figured up about what I had, about the services.
I got it now.
It's probably pushing $80,000.
Gosh.
Of what... I would, of just typical, ripping banks down, putting culverts in, rebuilding roads, hauling debris for hours and hours, truckload after truckload.
Because you had the equipment that a lot of people don't have.
Well, yeah, a lot of people didn't have that. I mean, we had everything from, from chainsaws to track hoe, and the knowledge to do it. I mean, just like at Rush Creek, that was an interesting place. Something I want to touch on is about the serotonin and when your endorphins kick and everything. My first interaction with helping someone is a friend of mine's community, family friend. His kids and my kids go to school together. And there's no communication still. And so I make it all the way out to Black Mountain with my machine up off of Blue Ridge Road. And I show up to the bottom of their driveway, And there's another guy with a truck, and he has arborist gear and stuff. Never met this other guy before in my life. He actually, I see their whole roadway is now a creek. The creek has switched course, jumped the banks, and is now coming down their main driveway to a whole little community. And 2 or 3 foot deep ruts. I mean, just an active creek. You could not tell it was a road if you didn't know it was a road before. And so we start talking, like I'm asking him what's he up to, and he's asking me what I'm up to. And so he was like, so we got, acquainted, which is pretty amazing how this happened. He's up trying to keep a big tree from falling on someone's house, huge oak tree, uprooted, and it's just teetering up by the root ball. And I was like, I'm here to help fix it.
Over the house.
Yeah, hanging over the house, fixing to split the house in two. Okay? And this is probably a 150-year-old white oak, big giant white oak.
This is like day 2 or 3 after.
This was 2 or 3, yeah. And so I walked the machine up there. I have to make a path for me to walk up this creek bank, or the creek, which was actually the roadway, to cut a path, adjust for them. I get up there, and that was more of a priority, I thought. So we get up there. Actually, I was working on the creek bank and getting that while he was setting up everything, getting lines in the tree and stuff. So I spent some time down there, was getting the creek back in where it's supposed to be because a bridge had clogged up, and it just dumped its banks. So we went up there. I got by the tree, see how much, my machine's medium size. It's 14,000 pound, 15,000 pound machine. And I was able to control the tree a little bit. And so he shoots a rope up and we pull it back, and I'm pulling the tree with the machine. And the tree, he cuts it a certain way. And so we're working together. Never met this guy before in my life. Doing professional, dangerous work. And this is all just out of heart. Mm-hmm. And the tree falls, and one little branch hit the gutter. Didn't even hurt it, but that's how close.
I gotta give you a fist bump, baby.
We got it, and I didn't get this on. It is on video. There's video footage. I don't have it with me, but my friend Sloan, when he first seen me coming up the road down there, he didn't know I was going to be there. The dude was just like, he threw his arms out and basically in tears, and jumped up on the machine and gave me a hug. Because he was like, I tried to call you guys, and he was like, if there's any person that could show up and make my day, he was like, it was me, it was you. And so, and then I helped work the road, and so we got, I needed lots of material, and so I got the creek back established pretty good, and then another crew came out, and then they started it was just like a big, domino effect. If we couldn't do everything at the one community, then some other crew would come in, and it was even on Rush Creek was the same way.
Common theme.
Yeah.
So Thomas and I once we figured out how bad it was, daily we were praying to be able to get to the people that really needed help. Mm-hmm. We're still stuck, and if there was anybody like in danger or their life was, critically in danger, that God would lead us there. And unfortunately, I guess some pretty dangerous stuff that he was doing on day 2, saving a house from a tree that's about to crush it. I wish that there was people that we actually saved their life to be able to tell that story, but it became mostly neighborhoods that are trapped. Mm-hmm. They have no access. They're hiking
miles.
In some cases, miles down to get gas, to run their generators, to get water. To get
insulin. The one lady, remember, Randy, the guy we met, was picking up supplies from a helicopter drop. Mm-hmm. Some of the areas we was going into out back deep Garin Creek, out deep far east parts of Fairview, out towards the beginning of Girton and number 9, which is Chimney Rock area. This is a little bit north of that. I mean, we got in places where we was told we can't go. It was too dangerous. And basically, I had to, kind of talk to God, to the officials there, and be like, hey, we're supposed to be back here. We got to go back here and take care of stuff. We're going to help people out. And we got roads up, so there's no communication still. There's not even communication for 911 set up. There's no In fact, we was using my backup radio was on a dedicated emergency frequency setup.
You guys told a story on one of your videos of how a house burned down and the fire department just couldn't get to it.
They couldn't get there. They just couldn't do it. Mm-hmm. There was no way to access, and that was up in Burnsville.
No, that was Arthur. I think that was Black Mountain area.
Was it Black Mountain? Yeah. There was one up in Burnsville. I talked to a guy. He had called me about some gravel because the gravel was it was Burnsville spruce pine. The gravel had washed out, or the creek had compromised the road. They had put local stone and stuff on the road and had a house fire. And the fire trucks got blocked in. Was that another one?
I think so. Jeez. So there was just so much destruction. It was hard to know where to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the first day I jumped in the truck with Thomas, I think it was day 6 after the storm. We actually met at Seacoast Campus.
Yeah.
In case we lost communication. It was happening all the time, in and out of communication. Maybe I get stuck. I was like, well, I'll wait at Seacoast until you get there, and vice versa. We get there, we hop in the truck, we drop off a culvert to a client that actually, miraculously, Thomas found a culvert and was able to hook a dude up that was he couldn't get to his house because it washed out his driveway, and they had machines, but they needed a culvert. We drop it off, and we had heard now. We decided that we would focus in the closest disaster zone to our homes. And so, but we didn't know if we could get back there. And my daughter's boyfriend had built a house this is back beyond Garin Creek, behind Black Mountain, between Black Mountain and Chimney Rock on Route 9. And we knew and had heard that a bunch of landslides were back there and that people had lost their life and that bridges were washed out and that it was hard to get back there, and weren't sure if we could get back there. But Wyatt, my daughter's boyfriend, had sent her, she had gotten a blue dot that he had made it back there, and we're like, okay, well, he made it back there.
Yeah.
We can make it back there with a trailer and 30,000 pounds.
Yeah, if my daughter's punk boyfriend can do it, I can surely do it.
A new house that they had built had flooded the basement, and they were still on the hook for it, so he had to go drain it before. Yeah. So he had hiked, or I don't know, I'm not sure if he could drive all the way back there, but we get back there, and there's a roadblock with a policeman.
Yeah.
And in front of us, there's probably 6, 7... like Polaris.
We was already back there.
Vehicles with the first day that they were trying to stop us.
Yeah.
But we got out of the truck, and the people with all the water and supplies, they let them through. And somehow Thomas talked the policeman into letting us through. Yeah. He kind of fibbed a little bit and said we had a crew back there referring to my daughter.
We did up on the side of the mountain, but we was trying to
Rahab lied too and sent the people in the opposite direction. That was a good lie, guys.
But I basically told the officer, I was like, he was like, well, if we let you by, we have to let everybody else by. And I was like, no. I was like, I don't need to come back out. I was like, he was like, well, you're not going to be able to get out till dark. And I was like, sir, I don't need to be back out till dark.
Well, we were also carrying camp with us in case we got stuck.
Yeah, but there's some of these communities and roads, the only way of communication was either maybe a piece of plywood or a door or some type of, surface sharpied in. Hey, we need gas. We need this. Or we have this. Or they would leave empty jugs out, and I would take and leave. I'd grab empty jugs, leave full jugs of gas. And the same thing out in Black Mountain. There was just this little post of every little community, and the communication was just there were some Sharpies there, and you put your name and what frequency you're on a radio frequency, and then someone would check that they acknowledged that you're in there. And if they needed you, they could reach you. And there was a little thing about supplies you could pick up or drop off. And that's the communication was like that for a couple of weeks, or several weeks, depending how far out of the town you got. Mm-hmm. So there's still no communication in some of these places.
Yeah. Let me ask y'all this. So it sounds, I think most people would agree that, hey, people have to feed their family. So if you guys were to have charged for some of your services, nobody would look down on you. It also sounds like you two don't have this attitude of, well, this is how all Christians should be, because you may have a Christian who has a business and they're like, man, I gotta make some money, man. Y'all aren't looking down your noses at people who didn't approach this situation like you guys. Why? What was it in you that caused you to say, we're gonna, work exceedingly more than, you guys exerted so much energy and did not want to get paid. Like, what is that how you've always been? Like, have you always lived like somewhat of a selfless attitude, or was this something that you feel like it just came on me and I just realized this is what God wants me to do?
That was the calling that I was supposed to step up to. Definitely when I seen the storm. I lost two of my biggest trucks, my dump truck, another new truck, and a snowplow truck in the same storm. And I go down there, pull my equipment out. I typically would not pull it with the truck I was pulling with. Yeah, it's a dually truck. It can handle it. But that's not really what I wanted that truck for, okay? But that's what I had at my disposal. And it was a, crew cab. I can put plenty of gear in it. Had a camper on the back to keep the rain or whatever out. I can haul more gear in it. So yeah, that's what I was supposed to use. I get out there and just start really being like, I have the capability to do whatever. I can do all things. I burn that verse up. I can do all things through Christ, Philippians 4:13. Maybe I take that verse too seriously. Can you do that? Can you take a verse too seriously?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Maybe if you take it out of context, you can, but...
Well, I'm going to get charged for using that verse because I feel like I can do all things.
I'm not saying you're taking it out of context.
I just feel like in when there's a time of need, if I have the ability to step up, sometimes I have the ability to help people with finances for something. Mm-hmm. During the storm, people was like, hey, can I borrow the $100? Can I borrow $50? Can I do this? And most people was like, hey, they gave back to me a month or two, whatever later. Some people haven't. Do you think I didn't? It was a gift. It wasn't a loan.
Well, then
it's coming back.
You can't go get money out of your bank.
Right.
There's no, yeah, exactly. Right. There's no money. But
thankfully, Thomas carries around a bunch of money.
Yeah, right.
I'm telling you, he's prepared for everything.
But I'm telling you what, you cannot outgive God. I know for a fact that if I do God's will, especially in desperate times of need, and I have faith, I can step out there, utilize what I have, my needs will be met.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like the gospel in the purest form, to the detail of Jesus saying, and I'm going to botch the words up, but, if someone asks for the shirt off your back, give them your coat also. If someone asks you to walk a mile, walk two.
Yeah.
That's, it really is inspiring, fellas. Let me ask you, Gabe, with the text that you sent, what did you mean by the blessings and charity was all around us? Thomas and I often talked about how easy they slip by and how we've missed out on some. What do you mean?
Yeah, so it seemed there was this, folks in the mountains are pretty tough and pretty resilient, and
rugged's probably a good word.
Rugged,
right? Rugged.
And they, I'm all right. I don't need any help. We encountered that a lot.
Yeah.
Yes, you need help. You're walking 2 miles. Let us, help you. So there was a lot of people missing out just because, like one of my friends needed a culvert. A guy drove up with a whole trailer full of culverts. We could have used all these culverts. He brought them from like Pennsylvania or Michigan. He drove down a trailer full.
What are you saying?
Culvert.
Yeah,
it's like the big pipes that flow under bridges.
Gotcha.
And those all got washed out. They were needed everywhere at this time. Because he felt like somebody else needed it more. He didn't
get one or two.
He didn't get one or two even for himself. He's like, no, go take them somewhere else. Yeah. And the guy's like, well, I'm leaving tomorrow. I need to dump them somewhere. Mm-hmm. If I had just reached that brother and let him know what we were doing and that we needed all those culverts.
Yeah.
We
then
could
would've
have
had-
put whatever in for him and then had surplus to go help other people, because we were picking up culverts that were washed out, sitting on riverbanks. Going down number 9, we seen culverts piled up on the, a piece here sticking out or a piece buried in the mud that washed out from somebody's place.
Yeah.
But
We
we
repurposed
repurposed it and moved it to the next place.
Yeah.
And so it's like, if I had big pockets and someone asked me what is driving you, and I told someone the other day, I was like, I have a big heart. I was like, but I don't have deep pockets. If I had deep pockets, then stand back, because you will see I can get some stuff done. Mm-hmm. I mean, and it's just like, it's not about the money, but that's, if I had 100,000 in my bank, I'd have a different truck.
One of my favorite God
Different
stories
equipment.
about Thomas is, so he exhausted all his resources like very quickly.
You talking monetary?
Yeah.
And gas.
Personal
all his
resources.
stored gas on his property. His stuff was damaged. He jumped in his truck and just started going out in the community, burning up all his gas. He used his radio and put a shout out over the radio. Hey, this is what I'm doing. I need diesel. There's no gas.
Yeah, there's no gas or diesel around.
In the middle of the night, this trucker comes up from South Carolina in his rig full of gas and pumps all his gas into a tank for Thomas to keep him going.
So it's for me to get my IBC tote available. I'm trekking through the woods down to get one, because there's trees everywhere. And the one I go grab had damage on it. I drug it up took me 30 minutes to drag it up through limbs and trees and get it on one of my trailers. And then I realized, the valve's broken, probably from damage. It's dark. It's 9:00 at night. And so I have to go grab another one that was another 100 feet through twigs and brambles. And I'm sweating like crazy trying to get this container. And those are huge. IBC totes are big. They're pretty good size. They hold like 250, 300 gallons. So I get this thing loaded up, get it strapped on my trailer, get over and meet this guy and get fuel. And then the cool thing is about that, I think it was the same story. I think it's the same guy, is I was so blessed by getting that. It was like 100 and something gallons worth of diesel. Okay. And I think it was 110 gallons, I think. I had one of these cordless saws, little cordless chainsaw. I had like a couple of them. And I was like, he's seen it in my truck and he's like, what's that for? And I was like, you could use something like this. And he was like, that's the most amazing little tool I've ever seen. And I gave it to him. And he was like, are you kidding me? And I think it's the guy I gave it to, because I had several people after that bring me fuel. And I think that's the guy that I gave it to.
That was key in the first few days, because just to get gas, once gas came online, was hours. And we were literally like...
We're sometimes an hour away traffic-wise. Typically, 30-minute drive, and now it sometimes takes an hour and a half.
And we were going early in the morning till after dark at night, and it was so convenient to have our own gas and not have to worry about gas and spending money on gas. Yeah. We loaded up with water. We loaded up with extra gas. We show up.
Yeah.
In the disaster zone, prepared. We got hot meals in there.
Yep, we stopped and got hot meals. And
Thomas is driving on this road. We've seen some destruction, but this was like blowing our minds. The roads were like halfway washed off. You're on a mountain road, and it's a sheer cliff down, and the asphalt is half gone.
Yeah, and we're like hugging the upper side of the inside of the road, because there's some places 70 feet drop. Okay.
Yeah.
And he's got 30,000 pounds. The policeman let us back there, so
we can get back there.
I wouldn't have drove a normal car back there. He's hauling a trailer with a big machine on it. We get back there and we get to this spot and the road is just gone. The river had washed in there, and
we have to drive up to this field that someone took a fence down up to this field and drive around. And is that where the helicopter had lifted off?
Yeah, we saw a helicopter lift off, and we're like, okay, we're in the disaster zone. And we were hungry, so we got out of the truck, and started eating. We actually were praying. Mm-hmm. All right, God, we're here.
Yeah, and this side by side had left from over there and went around the road and came across another bridge and was coming up towards us. And we stopped him because I was like, asking who needs help, what we need to do in here. And he was like, man, I need some, he was actually, I think he was picking up some insulin for that lady.
He had the supplies from the helicopter. They had sent him on mission to go to this community that didn't have any access and needed water and supplies.
And some insulin. There was a lady
They
up
had
there.
seen him from above the air and used his yard as a landing spot. And he was on E, out of gas.
His tank on the side-by-side was empty.
And he was using the last bits of what he had to go
just
help his neighbor.
Yeah.
And
I offered I was like, hey, he's like, can I get a gallon of gas? I was like, a gallon? I was like, I've got enough to fill your tank up. No. I was like, sir, if I'm putting some gas in your tank, I'm filling the whole thing up. And I was like, we also have some food here. He's like, are you hungry? And he's like, no, I'm good. I was like, are you sure? I was like, this is hot meals. And he was like, I know, I haven't really ate anything in 6 days. And the guy's in his, 70s?
he's older
or
gentleman,
80s? Or late 70s?
Gosh.
Easy. And he was out there serving the community, his neighbors, and the dude is like, I haven't ate in 6 days.
Wow, that's so interesting to hear, and it makes sense. I know that this is a thing with human nature, but just a reluctance to accept help.
Yeah.
In situations where it's just like you said, you need help.
So I filled his tank up on his side-by-side, and I filled the tank up in his belly.
Yeah.
So he got a big meal. I think it was
And he led us to the first road. The name of the road was Rush Creek.
Yeah, Rush Creek.
And it was now
Like 3 o'clock, 2:30.
3 o'clock.
Yeah.
We walked the machine back there. The river had washed out the bridge.
Complete gone.
The bank to the river is now 6 feet down. It's like a cliff, and they've got ladders set up on either. We got some pictures
Yeah,
of this.
one of them was built by just a part of a house that had washed away, and so they had just screwed some planks or nailed some planks together on a piece of wood, and they had doors and siding to put on the rocks so they wouldn't get their feet wet to walk across this river, because the river's probably 20 feet wide naturally, and it opened it up to probably close to 70 feet, maybe more.
You definitely couldn't drive up there, and there's 20 homes back there, and it was up a mountain, switching back in different houses, and they were all having to hike down. And thankfully, they were smart enough to park a couple cars there, so they could get out. But it was from that point, it was some of them 2 miles up.
Yeah.
And having to, carry gas up to their generator.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't even
bat an eye. We just unloaded.
We didn't even get permission. We just started cutting the bank down.
I just started, cutting the bank and fording the river so you could drive across it, and just making it where you could get a vehicle across it. And then,
bridge.
Yeah, the next day, was it the next day we went back out there? Mm-hmm. There was cars parked or trucks parked on the other side, which was cool. Is that when the fire department came out?
So we worked that night. We worked till dark. One lady came down while we were working, and she had a pistol on her hip, and she looked real nervous.
Yeah.
And I walked over to her and smiled at her, and she said, "Things are getting weird around here. What are you guys doing?" And really, those first couple of days, there was a little bit of
We've
tension.
encountered a lot of people that was like, "Hey, what are you doing here?" Mm-hmm. And we're just explaining, "Hey, we're just here to help you guys get out."
What was the skepticism based on, though? Like, what could y'all have been doing?
Taking advantage of people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
There was definitely talk about people going into neighborhoods and rummaging through houses, stealing things.
Gotcha.
With people in houses, there's no power, so you can't tell if anybody's home or not. So, I heard a couple people that going into people's houses and get into a confrontation because people just breaking in.
Yeah.
So, and even people that was showing up to help when we were helping, there was a couple of guys that showed up that I was like, I don't know what their intentions really are here. And then I'd talked to, and one of these was on Rush Creek several weeks after that. Had went back out there to do some stuff. And a guy came up, and I was like, I don't know what his purpose here was. Says he came in from out of state. I don't know if he just came in from over the mountain someplace, but drifted through. But, you always got to keep your guard up.
Well, she quickly softened up to us.
Yeah. I thought it was, I really got a laugh out of this because of just everything that you guys are doing. And then just real in passing, and again, we'll show these, we'll have the videos in the show notes. And if you're listening and not watching, we're going to have some pictures in the YouTube video for this episode. But y'all just mentioned in passing, yeah, we found this dog, and on its collar it's got a phone number, so we reconnected that dog with its owner. I'm like, y'all are helping dogs, y'all are helping people. Tell us about the guy who left his own needs to, I think, were they his horses that he was getting hay to, and then you guys decided, I think it was you who said, we fixed his house up better than it was before the storm, because y'all really wanted to take care of this guy who was super selfless. And I don't expect y'all to remember all the stuff that y'all put on video, but y'all remember this guy who was helping horses live, horses being a some people's,
they were using horses to get supplies in some places for weeks on end.
So that we're now day 8. Rush Creek was kind of a quicker job. Mm-hmm. Literally, we finish going up Rush Creek. So this ties into what you just asked, but there's a guy at the top of the mountain that has a tiny little tractor with a backhoe on it, and he had been working for 6 days to cut down,
to work back down the mountain.
And his tractor broke down, and we were 100 feet from him, so we were able to clear the road that last 100 feet and make it so that that whole community was then opened up.
Yeah, and it was amazing to do.
Literally, we were pulling out, and the fire department pulls in, and they're going to check on this old guy that and we had started to get word that the fire department was doing excellent work, and that was where to go to find where to help out. And so they, in passing, they're like, "Hey, you guys need to go to Frosty Hollow next." And we're like, "Frosty Hollow?" So we're like, "Where's that?" And they're like, "It's a mile down the road." So we load up and we go down to Frosty Hollow, and we meet Stefan. He's a volunteer firefighter, and that Frosty Hollow Road had 4 landslides.
4 big landslides.
That
compromised maybe 5 or 6, but on the main road there was 4 pretty good size. I mean, impassable landslides. Taking roads out, 140-foot drops.
So Stefan lived at the top of the mountain. I think it was a mile up, a long way. We couldn't drive up there, so it was a long trek in the slow excavator. I was just riding on. We're just slowly cruising up there. The first night we got a culvert cut out that was washing out his road. His road was so bad that the ruts in it he was taking basically trees.
Yeah, trees, logs, just to fill it up because there's no material. I mean,
and it had washed out, so it was impassable by car. And he had 2 horses up there, and there's a third one at the bottom. But the fire department had asked him to take over taking care of the animals
in the area there,
in the whole area back there.
Yeah, so he was in charge of getting supplies. They were still bringing supplies in via helicopter, hay, feed, all this stuff. And there's one of the ladies has a substantial farm up on a different branch of road up number 9. Has 200 cows or something like that. Yeah. A pretty good sized farm, but the roads are washed out. So he's got to get down to where he can get signal and for his satellite, so they could send out coordinates to direct a helicopter where to drop the supplies. And so that was one of his main things of him getting out. He had a 4-wheeler, but he said his 4-wheeler was riding 10, 15 miles to run a bale of hay. You can't haul much on the 4-wheeler. Mm-hmm. So he had a bag of feed and a bale of hay, but a place has 10 cows, you need 20 bales of hay. So he was running the wheels off of it.
So he could do 4 bales of hay on a 4-wheeler.
4 bales of hay is pretty wild. But and he lost, and their roads was hit. I mean, he lost his side-by-side, which is his main farm machine around there. It got washed out, and then they found it down the river and had pulled it out. And
which is working.
Yeah, it works pretty good. It needs some work on it, but it runs. Mm. So it's just and that's the community that I had just pulled my machine out of, seriously, last week. putting a culvert in, and we went up and put culverts in, dressed roads up. There's so much more work that still needs to be done across the board, not even in communities that we were in, but just everywhere around here, from down to Chimney Rock to Saluda to Old Fort, which is off of 40, Marshall. I mean, the stories that are just amazing. I mean, it blows you away. Irwin, Tennessee, just ripped to shreds.
Yeah. Burnsville was bad.
Burnsville, Spruce Pine.
So Thomas and I spent the next 5 days, and we were driving the machine in and out, which was really difficult on those roads. It was slow, and every time we went in, those first 3 or 4 days was like, sometimes we'd get stopped by the police for an hour, and Thomas would just lean on them, and they'd finally let us in and again. And so that community on Frosty Hollow was, Stefan was a volunteer firefighter, and then there was a couple other firefighters there. So the fire department actually was like, hey,
that was a vital community right there. And Kyle is actually active firefighter.
Okay, yeah.
And Kyle is.
And so once we went all the way to the top, because Stefan's was the worst. The landslide had come probably 50 feet from his house.
Well, it was right behind his house on the one landslide.
Yeah,
but the big one had came off the whole side of a mountain and shifted down.
Gosh,
it was pretty intense. And when we pulled up to that landslide, this is one of the God stories that's so awesome about.
Yeah.
Thomas was like, just out of instinct, he's like, he had lost his dump trucks in the storm, and he's like, God, I need a dump truck. And I was like, well, if we're asking him for things, God, I need a skid steer. And so we went to work, got some things done. The next day we pull up, and there's this dude, Jimmy, that shows up with a skid steer.
He was down in Swannanoa, Black Mountain area, using his skid steer to move supplies and stuff for people. That's all he's doing. He's from Candler.
And there's two firefighters there.
Two firefighters. They tell him, hey, they know Kyle and Stefan out in the Broad River Fire District. And so they had radioed a service of call into action, and so the dude shows up with the skid steer, and the cool thing is
he runs it for a half a day.
Yeah, he ran it for half a day, and he was like, "Man, my brother needs something," and my brother's well went out or something like that, and he's like, "I got to go fix it." He's like, "It's filled up. You've got supplies here. You guys know how to run it." He's like, "I'll be back tomorrow."
He handed me the keys to the skid steer,
and he didn't come back for a week. I
had that shit for a week.
Yeah. And then he came back, and he's been back a couple of times since then. But this is someone that just showed up like we did, just showed up and poured his heart out, and has been placed in parts of the community that typically, I drive through sometimes, and I've got clients throughout there, over the years. But it's not like, now I know that community like the back of my hand. Mm-hmm. Now it's like, I feel like I want to touch base with people. Not everybody, but there's a few people that it's like, this is good friend. We've created a friendship out of this.
Yeah. Stefan's like a lifelong kind of friend now.
Yeah, he's that's and I would jump in for hoops for these people, but and then you're gonna have like the one lady on Rush Creek. She came up and I think she gave me $60 for fuel. Mm-hmm. I haven't made any money like as a job. I've gotten compensated for fuels, and
by the time we left, it was, so we're now day 10 or 11. We finished with what we could do at Stefan's, made it so that he could at least get his pickup truck down.
Yeah, that was big.
And it was, he's using an excavator to try to grade roads, so it was a little sloppy. And we had the skid, but we were filling things in. The ruts with like mudslide debris.
Yeah.
And so we were really worried about another rain coming and it all just washing out, and we just spent 5 days fixing it. So we started a GoFundMe, and I have a dear friend that has a YouTube channel, and he sat down with me and we showed him pictures and we just kind of went through, and lo and behold, we got a bunch of a bunch of money in like one day from his YouTube channel. And
now, has that helped you guys? Because I was going to ask, and as we're wrapping this thing up, like, did y'all have to turn a corner where you had to share your workload with helping people, but then also making a living?
I haven't. The only time.
So I went 30 days without making any money, straight volunteer work.
Whole month.
And then after 30 days, and it shifted for me from working with Thomas. Once we got some funds behind Thomas, he was able to, like, he stayed there on Frosty Hollow. He just pulled his machine.
I just pulled my machine out, my main excavator. I just pulled out last week,
and it's still not.
So it has not made. You know, they've been generous and gave me a little bit, and I've mainly.
The storm was 6 months ago.
Yeah.
So
and the only income that I've had is I've taken my dump truck that I got.
We gotta finish the God story about the dump truck real quick. So a brother from Seacoast here and came down. Kyle, I think it's Kyle Christie. I never got to meet him, but he saw the damage. He heard about Thomas and I through Pastor Teddy, and he reached out to me to see if he could help. And he was trying to round up some dudes from Charleston that had skid steers to come line up with us, but we got the free skid for. We ended up with free skid steers that helped with the project. And Thomas had needed that dump truck. Well, lo and behold, a good friend had hooked him up with a guy that had just restored a dump truck, had about $40,000 into it, and said, "Hey, I believe in what you're doing. I'll sell you this thing for $9,000." Well, at this point, we haven't worked in weeks.
Yeah,
Thomas is
I didn't have $9,000.
We've now we're able to get to the bank. So you're able to.
Yeah, I borrowed some money from a buddy.
Borrowed some money from a buddy.
So it secured the truck.
Secured the truck, and Kyle's like, "How can I help?" And I said, "Well, really, we just put $5,000 down on this dump truck that we really need, but we're short." And he said, "Let me talk to Brian Lewis." And then, lo and behold, Seacoast main campus hooked us up with a little bit of funds to get that dump truck secured. And that dump truck is triple axle, huge dump truck.
Yeah, it likes its fuel, and and it's not like, oh, I got a dump truck. No, I had to put tires on it, because I'm busting tires out, helping and serving. I think from in the community we were serving in out there was this landslide up near Kyle's house. Did you see the big landslide at Kyle's in front of his yard?
The back one, I didn't make it back to that far.
Okay, so this landslide came off of a mountain, and Kyle was one of the firefighters out there. It was so powerful when it came down. I mean, logs, sand, debris, topsoil, rocks, anything you can just wash off the side of a mountain. It was so powerful. If you look at his horse lot, the fence is nice and straight, okay? It was so powerful that the pressure coming off the mountain pushed the ground and flexed the ground and bent the fence in the ground without the fence being tilted over.
Jeez.
It pushed the ground up. You can see where the ground, the pressure in the ground is rolled up next to the fence, but it didn't push the fence over. I'm talking a fence line that's probably 80 feet long. It was a straight line.
Gosh.
And the ground pressure flexed the fence that big.
Man.
I mean, it just flexed it. Like, if you put a string line on it, it's probably 3 feet in.
Wow.
Over an 80-foot span. And so, yeah, I think I hauled 22 truckloads. My heaping, I've got pictures I can share with this. Heaping truckloads of debris. The loads are so big, I had to take the gate off the tailgate because it's just monster loads that you would not normally haul down a road. I was just hauling on, private drives. Hauling from 1,000 feet away from his front of his house because he couldn't even get to the house. We had to take machines and cut a little path down to a lower spot where he can sort it and kind of with his overtime and machines and stuff, and burn this or try to grind this up or whatever. I spent I think almost a week doing that. I mean, I was able to GoFundMe. We generated a fraction of
basically covered the materials that Thomas used to put into the properties.
Yeah.
Yeah, it covered mainly that. And if I split it down, if I split it down and if I split it down and took the monies that was left over, it'd probably be. And there's no way to figure out the time. I mean, I kept track of all my time, but yeah, it's like. But am I worried about it right now? No, because I know that my needs will be met.
Wow.
So one of the ways that they are being met is that because of the dump truck, he was able to get connected with a company that needed debris to be hauled, and the state is paying well to haul debris out of Asheville area.
All the way to Johnson City.
And so Thomas has been able to use this dump truck that Seacoast helped get to get paid well. He's still doing, hauling storm debris, and it's not like regular dirt either, because it's like so compact by the water. It's like soot and rocks and lawnmowers and house parts and just craziness that gets thrown in the back of his truck. And
the GoFundMe is still active, right?
It is.
Yeah.
Is it still active?
Yeah.
It hasn't. We haven't pushed it in a while, and really the money that we use, the goal was to put rock on Stefan's road at the top, and because the bottom of the road was so bad, Stefan gave up all that work and funds and fixed up to his property, and we ran out of money. So
we'll have that in the show notes for sure. It's been unbelievable, and I know we just barely scratched the surface.
Barely scratched the surface, yeah.
Thank y'all, though, man. And for y'all's knowledge sake, if I look at it, I can say it. So it's a word, chronologizing.
That's
what I was trying to say.
Chronologizing.
Thank y'all. This has been awesome.
It's been a pleasure.
I think we got most of the God stories that I had written down. That was the main thing for me, was to make sure the main thing's the main thing. This isn't the Thomas or Gabe show. On his behalf, I want to say he is and has been a servant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I feel privileged to have the opportunity in a time. I mean, it really, if I sit back and I get amazed every time I drive through the communities, I'm like, wow. And then I look back and I'm like, I was part of that. I helped with that. I helped with that. Which, not saying I did. Look at me. I'm not saying that at all. But it does encourage me to be like, what you're doing is not for nothing.
Right.
I mean, what you're doing is a big need. And it's something about serving and going out into the community and just helping. I could do this forever.
I think both of us really thrived when the crap hit the fan. There's some people that, went into panic attack kind of mode.
Mm-hmm. And it was like it just came out of a shell. It's like,
but there was a few people in my circle of friends that were like, it's time to go to battle.
Yeah. Awesome.
You've been watching Seacoast Church's Things You Won't Hear on Sunday podcast. You can now become a patron of this podcast and receive exclusive content. Your support goes towards Seacoast ministry efforts and local presence. Also, be sure to leave us a review and subscribe to this podcast so that you get these episodes as soon as they're released. All of this information can be found in the show notes. Thanks for watching.